You're an NAN trying to ship one more automation. trying to ship one more automation. So you copy an Airtable trigger from an existing workflow, paste it into a new one, tweak a couple nodes, and move on. It works. Until it doesn't. A month later, one workflow misses a call. Another logs errors differently. A third one is still running an old version of the trigger you forgot existed. And now, you're debugging the system, not the automation. The fix is boring, and that's why it scales. One Airtable trigger goes into one dispatcher. A single routing key decides the path. Every subworkflow runs with the same contract and the same failure handling. By the end of this, you'll have a dispatcher that reads a routing key from Airtable, maps it to the right subworkflow, passes a standardized input and output shape, and refuses to fail silently. Validation happens up front. Retries are controlled. And dead letter logging comes back into Airtable so you can audit every miss. This is part 2 of 3. Today is build mode. We'll set up the Airtable fields that make routing and ops visibility painless. Then wire the dispatcher. So adding a new automation becomes adding a mapping and create a subworkflow, not duplicate triggers and hope. Start an Airtable. You need one field that acts as the routing key. Pick one. Commit to it. Call it workflow type if you want to be explicit. Or use status if your process already encodes intent there. Or service line if routing is organizational. What matters is that it's stable and it's unambiguous. Example values should look like things you'd put in code, such as late_enrich, invoice_follow-up, and support_triage. Now, add a small set of operational fields, not for aesthetics, for answering questions without opening NAN. Add last run at as a datetime. Add run status as a single select. Keep the vocabulary tight. Queued, running, success, failed is enough. Add error message as long text. Add attempted workflow as a short text field. Add dead letter as a checkbox. That's it. Minimal, but operational, useful. Now go to NAN and build the dispatcher. You start with a single Airtable trigger on the table or view you already use. The point is that this is the only place Airtable enters your automation system. Right after the trigger, normalize the payload. Pull the record ID, always. Pull the routing key from the field you choose. For example, fields.workflow type. Then pull only the fields your subworkflows actually need. Don't pass the entire Airtable record by default. It feels convenient, but it creates hidden dependencies. 6 months from now, you won't know which subworkflow relies on which field. Keep the payload intentional. Now, you need a source of truth for routing. Inside the dispatcher, create a single mapping from routing key to subworkflow. This is the part that prevents random branches from spreading across your instance. The mapping can be a simple object in a code mode or a set node that builds a structured value. The mechanism doesn't matter. The behavior does. Lead_enrich maps to SW-lead enrichment. Invoice_follow-up maps to SW invoice follow-up. And support_triage maps to SW-support triage. Use names or IDs, but be consistent. If you use names, keep them stable. If you use IDs, document them somewhere humans can find. Now route. Use a switch on routing key. Each case calls the matching subworkflow, and you must include a default route. No default means unknown keys just stop. That's how you get silent failures that look like nothing happened. The default route is where you treat unmap as a real event, not an edge case. Before we talk about failures, log in the handoff contract between the dispatcher and every subworkflow. Every subworkflow should receive the same input shape, even if it ignores parts of it. Send record ID. Send routing key. Send payload, which is a subset of Airtable fields that matter. Optionally, send meta, like a timestamp or a run ID, if you want correlation later. Now, define the output shape that every subworkflow returns to the dispatcher. Okay, as true or false. Message, as a short human-readable result, and updates as a set of Airtable field updates to write back. This is what makes subworkflows swappable. You can replace lead enrichment without touching the trigger. You can add support triage without rethinking the dispatcher. The contract stays stable. Now, we add the guardrails. This is where systems stop being fragile. Validation happens before routing. Check that routing key exists. Not null, not empty, not white space. Then, check that routing key exists in your mapping. If it's invalid or unmapped, you do a controlled failure. Write run status as failed. Set dead letter to true. Write an error message that a human can act on. Unknown workflow type, such as invoice_follow-up, is actionable. It tells you it's a typo. It tells you where to look. Set last run at to now. Set attempted workflow to whatever you would have run, or leave it blank if nothing matched. Then stop cleanly. No partial execution. No mystery. Now, retries. Retries are not a feature you turn on everywhere. They're a decision you make where failure is likely to be transient. Retry subworkflow execution errors if they're caused by timeouts, rate limits, or temporary upstream issues. Do not blindly retry side effects that can duplicate. If a subworkflow sends an email, creates an invoice, or provisions something, you need a gate. That gate can be an already set field in Airtable, or an external independency key, or an upsert pattern where the unique key is record ID. The point is simple. If you retry, you must be able to prove that retry won't create a second artifact. Keep retry counts small. Use increasing delays. And treat repeated failure as a signal, not something to hide. Now, dead letter logging. On any failure path, validation failure, unknown route, subworkflow error, you write back to Airtable. You can write back to the originating record if that's enough. Or you can write to a dedicated log table if you need history and multiple attempts. At minimum, log, road status as failed, error message, last run at, routing key, attempted workflow, and dead letter as true. This turns NAN failed somewhere into this record failed because X at Y. And it changes how you operate the system. You stop hunting through executions. You start working from an audit trail. One more design choice that matters as this grows. Centralize what should never be duplicated. One trigger, one credential set, one error handling standard. When you add a new automation, you add a mapping engine, and you build a subwork. Everything else stays stable. You have the working core. Airtable supplies a routing key. The dispatcher maps it to the correct subworkflow. Every subworkflow receives the same input contract and returns the same output shape. And failures don't vanish because validation, retries, and dead letter logging push the truth back into Airtable. Routing is only half the lead, though. The next problem is scale. As routes grow, the mapping becomes a maintenance service. Observability needs to work at a glance. An extension needs to stay clean without turning the dispatcher into spaghetti. If you want, tell me what your routing key will be in Airtable and 2 example values. Something like workflow type, lead_enrich, or invoice_follow-up. I'll reply with the cleanest mapping approach for that setup. In part 3, we'll make this production friendly as the number of subworkflows climbs. One trigger in, one routing key decides the path, one dispatcher enforces the contract and the guardrails. That's the difference between a pile of workflows and a system you can scale without missed calls, inconsistent handling, or failures to dissipate.